My name is Ireland May, and my theorist was Harry Stack Sullivan. Sullivan was a psychiatrist who believed that personality was intricately linked with relationships. Sullivan's major theoretical contribution was his interpersonal theory, in which he explored how emotions, thoughts, and behavior are influenced by interactions, relationships, and communication with others, as well as how they shape self-concept and identity. He proposed two major actors in the ability to build and maintain relationships. Security is defined as a lack of anxiety, and Sullivan believed that interactions with others help to shape the feeling of security. On the other hand, anxiety is caused by real or imagined threats and are associated with disruptions to relationships. Through his theory, he also proposed that psychiatric symptoms arise from a fundamental conflict between individuals and their environment. He also believed that mental disorders could be linked to interactions, especially schizophrenia. In connection with his ideas of psychiatric symptoms are the states of euphoria and tension. Euphoria is the state of utter well-being, and tension is euphoria's opposite. He proposed that we exist somewhere between absolute euphoria and absolute tension, but he also believed that an imbalance of them was related to mental health issues. The mental health issues largely come in the experience of anxiety and depression, and they are associated with too much tension. He also associated euphoria with security and anxiety with tension. Sullivan proposed 6 developmental epochs or stages to represent people's capacity for developing relationships. Each of the stages represent a new way in which individuals can relate to others. Stage 1 is infancy, which is birth to 18 months. At this point, the most important relationship is with the caregiver. In most cases, this will be with mom. Stage 2 is childhood, which takes place from 18 months to 6 years, in which kids are building relationships with both imaginary playmates and other adults. Kids are working harder to get the adults and caregivers in their lives to engage and play with them. Juvenile is stage 3, which occurs from 6 to 9 years, and peer groups are beginning to be formed. At this stage, gender is not as important as age is, as kids are just working to build relationships with those close to them. The 4th stage is pre-adolescence from 9 to 12 years. At this stage, the development of same-sex relationships are formed. This is where a best friend might come into play, and interactions are largely between the same sex. The 5th stage is early adolescence from 12 to 14 years, when the identity is becoming more developed and intimate relationships begin. At this stage, a first girlfriend or boyfriend may happen. The last stage is late adolescence from 14 to 21, when lasting romantic relationships are formed. This is when people really learn to build a partnership. The last aspect of Sullivan's theory was his ideas of self-concept. He believed that self-concept was based on both social acceptance and feedback. The more acceptance one receives, the more that aspect will be associated with the good me. The good me is the positive aspects of the self that you are willing to share with others. This can be anything from taste in music to sexual preferences. On the other hand, things that are getting non-positive feedback is associated with the bad me, or not me, as they are not socially accepted. The bad me is any negative aspect of the self that should be hidden from others. This may be a propensity to make inappropriate jokes. Lastly, the not me is any personal aspect that should be hidden from awareness in the unconscious. This is not only things that should be hidden from others, but things that should be hidden from the self. If they are recognized by the self, they are typically very anxiety-provoking aspects. This could be sexuality or gender identity. Next, we're going to discuss Sullivan's life as well as the major events that were happening in the world throughout his life. Sullivan was born in February of 1892 in New York. A few years later, the Spanish-American War occurred. Between April and December of 1898, Spanish rule ended in the Americas and the U.S. acquired new territories. In 1903, Ford released the first car that would make transportation easier. The construction of the Panama Canal began in 1904 and continued to 1914. At its completion, a shortcut would be provided between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Sullivan began his graduate studies in 1911 at the Chicago College of Medicine and Surgery. At this point, his studies of psychiatry was beginning. In 1914, World War I began and continued until 1918. In 1917, Sullivan graduated with his MD and could begin practicing as a psychiatrist. However, he joined the Army the same year. He would remain in the Army until 1920. In 1921, he began his career by working as a neuropsychiatrist at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. In 1923, he moved to Shepherd and Enoch Pratt Hospital, where he began continuing clinical research. He then became the research director in 1925. He would remain at the hospital until 1930. In 1927, Sullivan took in a foster son. However, he was often referred to as his lover. Despite the speculation, they were never married and never confirmed their relationship status. In 1929, the Great Depression began and continued until 1939. In 1930, Sullivan moved back to New York. While his move was clear, it is unclear if his motives were to begin teaching or to begin a private practice. In 1933, he helped found the William Allison White Psychiatric Foundation, which helped train future psychiatrists. In 1936, he helped found the Washington School of Psychiatry. In 1938, he served as the editor for the Journal of Psychiatry. In 1939, World War II began and continued until 1945. In 1945, Sullivan helped establish the World Federation for Mental Health and was a consultant for the post-World War II International Congress on Mental Health. He later died in 1949 in a hotel room in Paris. Many of Sullivan's theoretical components appeared to connect to either world events or his own personal life. His developmental stages, for example, appear to relate to his own life. Throughout his stages, he never mentioned gender terms in relation to romantic relationships. His lack of gender likely had to do with his sexuality and a drive to be inclusive of himself and others. Additionally, his ideas of the self-concept may also be connected to his sexuality and his need to hide his feelings. There are clearly aspects of every person that they will hide from others, but the main aspects people tend to hide from themselves are their sexuality or gender. The idea for the not me and its anxiety-provoking tendencies likely stem from his drive to hide his sexuality. The tension and anxiety aspects of the theory likely stem from Sullivan's experiences with war times. Both of these experiences are most likely to be heavily felt during war times, as the threats are not only real but imminent. Lastly, his associations with psychopathy with an unusual environment likely comes from the times of war. Sullivan likely saw the anxiety and depression experienced during war and determined the anxiety and tension they were experiencing were directly related. He likely also saw the effects of PTSD and other symptoms and associated them with psychopathy. And here are my sources. Thank you for watching.